Hey, it's Chris. So we've talked about the huge games, right? The games that you expected to do well, the games that you knew name-wise going in. What about the games you didn't know about? What about the ones that came out of nowhere that said, whoa, what is this? How is this? What? Awesome. Like, let's talk about those campaigns. The ones that were coming from the smaller publishers, the more indie style of things nowadays. On crowdfunding, that surpassed expectations, that came out of nowhere, that were just a delight to be a hold of. Let's run you through 10, my personal 10, that you should know about, that you might even still be able to get in on if you're in time. Let's do this. Now, number one, this one, it's small, but it's actually making waves, and there was a lot of interest in it even prior to that, and that's Fit to Print from Flat Out Games. This tile-laying, real-time, printing your own newspaper style of game absolutely clicked and checked a whole bunch of boxes for me personally, from the makers of Calico, Verdant, Cascadia. That is a very impressive trio. Say what you will about Verdant. I think the jury is still out on that one, but the other two, up there, right? And so Fit to Print, was just in the lines with the other games from Flat Out Games. It was flat out freaking impressive. Now, you might argue that the sum total of it isn't quite as impressive, right? 8,000 backers, which comparatively, 8,000 is still 8 freaking thousand, but only just over, $200,000. So that was the interesting thing. And why is that? Well, it's because it only had a $29 pledge level, folks. 8,000 backers, though. Think about that for a second. That's why it's impressive. And it comes with a promo pack that you won't be able to get on the retail side nearly as well. Shipping is like $6, so $35 cannot be beat. This is the prototypical example of how to do a retail version on crowdfunding. Other companies look at Flat Out freaking Games. That's the reason, the combination of a whole, 1, because I think this game's be freaking amazing, 2, because I love real time, 3, because I love tiling, 4, because the price point is absolutely perfect, 5, because you're getting value before others as well. Other indie publishers should take note, look at this, and go, this is how we want to emulate things going forward. And the campaign page is nothing to sneeze about. I'm a backer of this. I, flat out have no problem telling you that. That one was unintentional. Tiling, awesomely goodness from that aspect of things. I think this is going to be a sleeper hit of a game of the year. I think this is going to be in line with Cascadia. However, I think I'm also going to be in the minority because of one of those things I mentioned, the real time. People routinely across the board as a mass market hate real time. I love it. I love Bullet, Sorcerer City. Those are 2 games in my top probably 25 to 30. Sorcerer City being the higher one, Bullet in the top, 10 easily. So when I look at this, I just go, all of these things are just the combination of everything I love. And I won't tell you that I have all of the other Flat Out games. I don't. I only have Cascadia. Calico thematically doesn't feel right for me. Verdant mechanistically wasn't quite up my alley, but I'd be willing to trade for Verdant to try it out too, to see if I thought it was different enough to be interested in it. But that's probably the make it or break it. And all in all, you have to say that this is the absolute standard bearer for indie style at this point, and that's why I had no problem putting it at number 1 here, as I'm just scrolling randomly throughout the page with a family variant and a puzzle variant and a turn-based variant. If you're not interested in the real time as well, the fact that they've put that in there officially makes it top notch. Now, number 2, again, is going to be a slight departure with Earth from Inside Up Games. I was familiar with Inside Up Games and Connor McGooey, who is the designer from the previously sitting on my shelf over there, yet to be formally reviewed, Block and Key, a 3D spatial element Tetris-like game. Only they went a completely different route with this. They went with a natural-based engine tableau building can management style of game in a 45-minute time frame, right? Again, checking a bunch of boxes here and making it worthwhile. This one raised almost $750,000 Canadian dollars, 10,500 backers. That may sound like a lot, because it is a lot. And you may go, Chris, well, that's not indie, Chris. Neither of these are no, neither are small companies, right? Inside Up Games, their other track record, you may know them from Summit, Block and Key, or Draft Records, which was their most recent run, right? Draft Records had about 1,000 people. Block and Key only had 2,000. And then Summit over here actually only had 700. Like Summit went on and did like their second expansion over on GameFound recently and did better. But this was not like a trend of the like sort of and then zoom, right? 10,000 with this one. That's a massive, massive increase. And so they're doing something right that people were really encouraged to see as well. Was it the absolute most enticing campaign for those style of things? No, but yes at the same time. Because it's like they took a page out of Flat Out Games' playbook and they said, okay, here's a little bit of deluxification, a little bit of wooden leaf tokens, soil tokens, but then we're also going to give you just a smattering of promos that you can get for a $42 price point with low shipping. That's not insignificant. $42 for this style of game. That's about what I would think from a retail side. The opposite video that I did of this, talking about sort of the disappointments, was the drastic difference between what we expected and what the cost actually was. Well, they seem to be hitting the mark. I don't know if that's good market research, that's good hype, that's good investment in the product that you're doing, but it just looks like an incredibly solid game of a tableau management. And I love this sort of choose one and get the strong or get the weak. And when I saw briefly watching Rado's playthrough, I knew that this was in the line of things because I just played Power Plants, which is a similar style of game in a completely different way with a little more area control. But that's what I like doing in these games. And this time frame of 45 to 90 minutes is a sweet spot for my group as well as my wife and I. So it just clicks all of those things naturally that flow. And I mean, 10,500 backers prove my point right there. Now, as we get into some of these other ones, you're going to go, okay, Chris, he just picked all these 4 high 5-digit. No, believe me. These are indie projects. Number 3 here. Tesseract. This one is probably the most recently ending project of all of these on this list. And this was a complete out of nowhere for me, personally speaking. 1,700 backers. This is basically a dice cube, a 4x4x4 dice cube that you're slowly dissecting, trying to get the dice out of onto your player board before the end of the game, before time runs out, essentially. And you're using dice manipulation and asymmetric powers in order to do so, not only to get them out there, but in certain color combinations and certain die face color combinations. So you're trying to manage that as you go along as a cooperative dice manipulation game. Because if there's anything that you know about me is I love these style of pandemic-esque cooperative games, but this one again stands out, makes you go, okay, why do I need this one? Why should I get this one? What makes it stand apart? And this one does that in spades. Now, when you go through here, you can see removing, adjusting, transferring, containing the different numbers, unique, all these different actions. And so it breaks it down as well. Some of the most successful stuff on crowdfunding is having these sort of things that tell people, hey guys, this is actually how the game flows. This is how you play it. $50 pledge gets you these custom dice. And that's really where the biggest price point is going to be. And there is an all-in pledge up for $130, but otherwise $50 for something like this, I would make the argument, yes, maybe it's slightly more than I would have expected, but with everything that's going along with it, I can't also argue against it because this is a small company that's not going to be hitting, 1,700 stretch goals and having an artificial, add-on in terms of that, right? Like you're adding 2 cards, 1 card, 2 cards, 1 cards for games that, are trying also not to go outside of their scope and cause delays. So is it enough incentive for you to get like a dozen or 15 cards for maybe $5 or $10 more than what you pay at retail plus or minus shipping? This is one of those that I'd say you make the argument either way, and I don't think you're wrong. If you want to wait for retail and see if you can get it without those extra cards and maybe at a slightly cheaper price point, great. If you want to go ahead and support a small publisher like this as well, that, isn't going to get made elsewise, again, this one is close enough for me that I say it's a no-brainer if you're that interested in it. This is one that I am actually closely eyeing whether or not I want to do a late pledge on, because I seriously had a little bit of, am I going to do this? Am I not, right at the very end? And I still haven't gotten that feeling away. So this one is probably the highest on this list of those games in that sense. So that's why it's number 3. Next up at number 4 here, we have Crafty Games' Tabriz. I covered this on the channel. I did a review of it. This is a solid, lightweight engine builder that really just works. The sum of the parts is much more than the individual parts. On paper, you may look at this and go, you know what, this doesn't seem like it. It only got 1,800 people. It got $141,000 though, with the metal coins and the deluxe playmat, which was exquisite, by the way. I can see people saying that for the price point, this was not necessarily worth it. I can't in good conscience tell you that this one is one that you needed to get on crowdfunding. But I can tell you, though, that if you like any of these elements, you should have this on your list, because I am not a huge fan of worker placement. I am not a huge fan of area control. This has area movement, i.e. you're moving to these different stalls across the board, but the changing dynamic of how many workers can be there and how many resources are there, because if the resources fill up a space, then the space gets wiped and then there's no resources there whatsoever. And the dynamic of resources that are allocated there in the first place by the beginning of the round, by the nature of what you roll on the dice, is a little bit different, but boy howdy does it work. And it's nothing necessarily like, whoa, this is completely new and utter, but it's great. It's fantastic. And if you don't want the playmat and the metal coins, go pick it up at retail. Heavily recommend this as a lighter style engine builder. Like, I'm very happy to have played this one because it fits me perfectly. It fits my play group. It fits my wife and I absolutely 100%. And so to see them have success, yeah, I mean, they went with the over deluxeification. And I'm not always a big fan of that. And if you wanted the premier edition, it was going to cost you $85 here. And it's going to have all of the metal coins and the dice tower. And if you don't want that stuff, then yeah, $50 is probably not necessarily going to be worth it, even though I think this playmat nowadays, having gotten Aeon Trespass Odyssey recently, I don't really like the cardboard boards anymore, especially when they're that big and they're massive and you're refolding and folding and folding and folding, and then the board feels like it's going to tear at some point. And so I am leaning more towards the playmats like this, or in even something like Flick of Faith right behind me on the shelf. So I have nothing wrong with that. I would rather see playmats than some of the other deluxeifications nowadays. And so I think this is going to be a sleeper hit for people that are looking for this style of game. If you want something heavier, no, this isn't it. If you want something that I don't have a lot of in terms of worker placement, light engine style, resource management, boom, no problem saying very happy with this one. Number 5 here, we're going another different direction. Now, you may recognize the name of the company, but it's not one of the bigger ones, even though they are somewhat more prevalent on the crowdfunding side of things. And this is Colossal Games, and this is Almost Innocent. This is a cooperative deduction progressive story game along different scenarios. Some of those keywords there are going to sound familiar, right? Cooperative, right? Okay. Deduction, right? Scenarios, right? All of those three together? What? I'm not sure I've seen a whole lot like that. And I like the aesthetic for this game. I have no problem with it. $30 for the base game, $40 for a deluxe level. Now 2,200 people and $100,000. That's not exactly gangbusters, but $30 and $40 pledge points. I mean, that's still amazing to break 6 figures. And it just gets all the stretch goals. You get deluxe for an extra $10. Do you need the screen printed wooden tokens, the dry erase pads, and the markers for each character? No, absolutely not. If you want to pick this up for $25 at retail, again, this is another one that I'd say absolutely have it on your radar, have it on your short list. And this is also one where a little deluxeification here might actually be a quality of life issue as well. A direct exclusive here with an additional character and all of the other asymmetric powers that you need in this game. This is probably the second highest one on the late pledges that I'm thinking of doing because it works weight-wise, it works deduction, cooperative-wise, like I've already said that I love, and there's nothing else really like it out there. There really isn't. You're finding unique solutions based on questions that you're giving like clues to your teammates, going through the chapters that are adding slowly mechanics, powers, rules, asymmetric as you go along. Step up from like my kids playing Zombie Kids Evolution or Zombie Teens Evolution with the slowly unlocking rules, teaching people how to play better and better and better. And I really love those aspects of games. I don't think that those can be done enough. And so that's why I have no problem saying that this one is also highly recommended on my radar, even though I haven't had a hands-on. So that's why you should give a look-see and consider checking it out. Number 6, another one that I covered on the channel. Another one I was happy to cover. This is Off the Pages, Harrow County. Now, I did the review. I did the solo gameplay. Messed that up. Embarrassed myself. Very humbled always doing those things because I'm horrible about doing it on camera. But this is one from a 2-player root style of asymmetric factions that you're mastering your faction on a grid-based hex situation, trying to score points based on area control, asymmetric powers, and movement as you're going along. And so this is just a very unique style of game that I haven't really played anything else like it before. And I say that in a very good way. However, at the same time, because of the asymmetric learning nature and because of the thing I just mentioned with Almost Innocent in terms of adding on layers, they did that with the scenarios, just like Disney Sorcerer Alliance up on the top shelf behind me. I like when you do that. You can customize the game of how deep you want to play, how tricky or how mechanistically complex you want to play as well. And if you have a 45 to 90 minute time frame, which I would argue it's definitely on the 60 to 75 minutes at least, I don't think 45 minutes unless you're playing at the simplest levels, this game is going to flow very smoothly. Because if you're someone like me who can't get played at the 2-player, what else can you do to simulate that? And this does a tremendous job of doing so. I also think for what mind management, the previous off-the-page games did for sort of the hidden deduction, hidden movement style of games, this is going to do from a root style of things. Because as I've always said with root, is that you don't like root. You like the idea of it, but the conceptualization versus the actuality on the table are two completely different things. And so this is a more accessible, essentially, version of that in a different way. And so if that appeals to you, this is heavily look-see. Just like with mind management, if hidden deduction just is completely not your vibe, I don't think that's going to change your mind. And if you don't like the concept of these asymmetric factions going head-to-head, primarily 2-player, now you have a 3rd faction and a 4th faction, but you can kind of mix and match. Anyway, but that's a whole nother side thing. The main core crux of this is 1 versus 1. And if you're looking for something like that, great. But if you just don't like that at all, I would say just like with mind management, it's not going to change your mind either. So, good price point. Off the Page Games puts out a great deluxe product. I don't think there's any question about whether or not this is going to be a tremendous game. It's just whether or not it's a tremendous game for you. And that is always, always, always the most freaking important point that I stress in all my videos. But that's also why it's number 6 on the list. Number 7, this one is probably going to be the biggest departure for those of you that know me on this list and have watched my other videos. This one is Orienberger Canal from Rosenberg. It was from Spielworks over on GameFound, and I covered this. People were comparing it like Rondel System to like Glass Road, and it was a game in the lines of mechanics from Ora and Labora and Le Havre. I'm mispronouncing those probably. Simpler rules and what they were calling an evolution in this series. It was expensive for what it was in terms of basically being sets of cards. However, it's grown on me. And I have given it significant more look as a 1 to 2 player game, 2,200 people backing it. And the only issue is I can't get a copy anymore. I can't late pledge. They closed the late pledges. But again, 81,000 pounds, 45-minute playtime. The Rondo resource wheel here, I go back and forth. An expansion, 1 and 2 with a copy for 49 euros. Is it more expensive than I wanted to originally? Yeah. Is it going to be available anywhere else right now? No, not whatsoever. So you know what? I've got a little bit of FOMO going on here too. I've got a little bit of FOMO because I think this has some really, really, really solid, serious potential to be another sleeper hit on the slightly heavier card game side of things. Is it going to be for everybody? No, but they run through what it is down here. These expandable separate card decks that are adding the resource wheel as well from the Glass Road, like I mentioned, and it's a 2-player or even solo game of 7 rounds with 2 phases. There's only 5 actions you're taking. This is straightforward, simple, but not losing the depth of complexity or the mechanistic strength that those other games have. And so I can't understate why I would be a little bit excited about this if you had gotten a copy at this point, or if you want to give me your copy or sell me your copy. Anyway, but that's why it's on the list, because I think this one, unlike some of the other Spielworks ones, which have been kind of up and down, I think this one has the highest potential that I've seen from them since I started covering crowdfunding in the first place. So that's why it's on the list. Number 8, we're going to go back over to GameFound here. This one barely funded, and this was Damask from Radical 8 Games. This was a 1 to 4 player weaving game, right? Like weaving. You're trying to impress the Weavers Guild as you gather resources, as well as utilize the actions of other players to help or hinder, creating this thread that you're managing as you go along. And I wasn't sure about this one. This one is definitely truly indie. You're getting your cubes, taking another player's overstock if they have too much, mounting your resources onto the thread, and only using 4 main actions that are going to stem all of the rest of the gameplay. Again, they say we maxed out all the quality of the components, so you're getting everything to begin with. It is not one of the most aesthetically impressive games that I have seen, but it seems just in the wheelhouse of games that click like the other ones that I mentioned in terms of the lighter engine management, tableau style, resource gathering, and utilizing style of game. And yeah, the stretch goals are a little lackluster, but this is a true indie project where they said, we don't have the funds to add a whole bunch of extra stuff, and that's okay because the game is balanced the way it is. And truth be told, £28 is probably a much better deal because this one's not going to be widely available. And if this one hits well, I can easily see it going for double that on the secondary market if the gameplay holds up. So we'll kind of have to see, because it looks like late pledges are closed at this time too, which is unfortunate because, I've been wondering about this one as well. So stops the temptation at least, right? Now, number 9. This one is unique because it also made my slightly, spoilers, I'm not sure if this video is going to be before or after the other one, slightly disappointing crowdfunding campaigns as well. And this one was Fox Experiment, but I'm also going to give them kudos in addition, because at the same time, they still had 8,400 people and nearly $700,000 for this game. And Pandasaurus, kind of goes back and forth between retail and crowdfunding. The last one I think before this was maybe Skate Summer, which again had more deluxification in terms of exclusivity and why you get it now. And this was very similar. And I have mixed feelings. I think this is going to be another absolutely fantastic game, but I saw absolutely no reason to pick it up on retail because the deluxifications that they offered, unlike some of these other campaigns that I've already mentioned, had absolutely no appeal to me. But this is another one where I'd say, is this on my radar for retail? 100%. I'd be lying to you if I said otherwise. But one of the biggest issues I had was these deluxified meeples, these screen printed meeples, right? Let me show you a picture comparison because it'll tell you more than I can say in a short amount of time. Look at this meeple right down here. Look at these 2 meeples right here in the orange. And look at those and say, if that wasn't screen printed right now, could you tell that that's a fox based on the shape alone? Okay. Now let's go down here and look at these meeples right here. Can you tell those are fox related? Look at the difference between that. It's like they got lazy on the screen printed ones, or it was too hard to put screen printing on these, and they made them cheaply generic looking. I hated that on Meeples and Monsters from AEG when I got that copy, and I hate it on here. And that was another reason where if I just had these at retail, I would be completely happy. Because the other ones, in my opinion, look not great. Not very professional speaking, especially when you're telling me it's a fox, which if I didn't know it was a fox, I would never be able to tell. And there are plenty of other meeples that look just as good without screen printing. And I would say these look better without screen printing as well. That was the main reason for the price point increase, as well as 5 and 6 player expansion, which I have never used once of the 5 to 6 player expansions that I picked up on crowdfunding. So I'm not going to pay extra for an expansion I'm never going to use. That's why I strongly said retail, retail, retail. Still on the wish list though, but retail. So we reached the end here, number 10. This one, again, was more of an expansion. Good Games put out a new couple expansions, 3 new expansions here for Unfair. The Unfair Take That deck building theme park expansion based game with a new solo mode. And from the reports that these expansions were actually better than some of the first ones that came out for the base game as a whole. I have yet to get my hands on a copy of this game, and I still want to because I love some Take That chaos. I love just messing with other people's plans and causing chaos as a chaotic neutral alignment, essentially. Even if it's king making, even if it's not king making, I just love experimenting in games like this to see what crazy stuff I can do and come up with. And they said 4 more expansions here, actually. You're going to get Comic Book, Hacker, Kaiju, and Ocean, along with the other 4 expansions they've already put out. I think it just looks like a very, very solid addition to an already solid, underrated game. I don't know how much else there is more to say. I don't think there was a ton of incentive necessarily to back it on crowdfunding. That's the only really reason I can think of. I think they're offering some promos, and I'm not even sure they're exclusive promos. But for a solo game, as well as just looking like it is something incredibly great for a game like this, which adding a couple extra decks, and the only question probably is if you're someone like me who doesn't have the base game, which expansion set would you pick up? Would you pick up the first 4 or the second 4? Personally speaking, the second 4 are more appealing in theme. Aliens, B-movies, dinosaurs, and Western, none of those appeal to me, whereas comic book, hacker, and kaiju definitely appeal to me. Ocean a little less so, but even more than 2 or 3 of the other ones. So I would probably get the base game and the second expansion, but I've had my eye on it now for some time, and I'd love to trade for a copy in the near future, and this would just make the icing on the cake even sweeter. Now, what top 10 video would be complete without a couple of honorable mentions here? We're going to do 2 at the end here. One is Assault on Doomrock, the Ultimate Edition. This one over on GameFound when it launched. This was the, I'm assuming, ultimate and hopefully not penultimate edition of this Assault on Doomrock, raising $200,000. And I'd always heard of it, I'd always seen of it, but I'd never really given it a look-see in terms of, okay, what is the actual mechanic in this cooperative sort of survival-ish game with a, you know, fantasy-ish sci-fi thematic incorporation, right? And when I pulled up the page, when I read the rulebook, when I watched a little bit of gameplay video in terms of how you're going to be interacting with these various sites and then going up against a boss at the end as a cooperative game, I said, I don't really have a whole lot like that. And I would really be considering looking at this. The only issue was if I'm looking at that, that's, you know, right? That's the issue right there. And so I just couldn't justify that, including the premium board and the premium chips. I would probably be getting something down here like the roguelike pledge, which again is still going to cost you, you know, probably near $150 by the time it's shipped. And as a game, I could see myself, and this was probably why it's on the honorable mention too, from my personal taste, is I could see myself either loving this or absolutely just not being in favor of it, you know, nearly as much as I think I'm going to like it. And because I can't guarantee that, I just couldn't commit 3 digits worth of price point to that, especially when we talk about some of the other ones that are on this list that I didn't pledge that are less than half of that I had a hard time committing to, right? I have a commitment problem. Anyway, but that's the issue. But I think ultimately this is going to be an ultimate project, and I'd love to be able to play this at some point and get some hands-on experience to see if it meets my expectations or if it's just not in the cooperative line of things that I enjoy personally in the first place. The last honorable mention, going all the way back to the beginning of the year, again, did not forget about anything. Chang'an from Deer Games, mixing different decks to basically create your different ancient Chinese capital as you're exploring this card management style of game. You're engine building with some resource management in order to shape your urban structure of this city on your own personal board. You're going to be building these amazing buildings and then trying to get influential characters into the neighborhood to renew and improve your neighborhood even further, commercially, militarily, scientifically, or even production or politically speaking. I like the aesthetic feel of it. The price point for 30 euros was about what I would expect for this card style of game, with a Kickstarter exclusive expansion as well, that you're modularly using different sets of decks in each game. And I love Tableau engine management, like I said at the beginning. Production, resources, building, and back and forth. I think this one, again, is going to be one of those that I could see either going, you know, very strongly under the radar reprint, or, you know, I just saw the other one that kind of, you know, made me think about too, but ultimately doesn't seem to be as good as I was hoping, was Blazon. Kind of didn't get as well of reviews since it's come out, but this reminds me of something like that I could see, you know, people really digging into and really liking. And I just wanted to mention it here at the end because I think you can still even late pledge. So Chang'an, there you go. That's it. That is 10+2 indie games that I think are going to surprise people. I think that are going to be great potential of games. And not only from that aspect of things, but especially when I talked about something like Earth in there, what are they going to do in terms of follow-up, right? With things like Pandasaurus, with things like Tesseract, where is the next game from them going to come? Because also when you see some of these games and some of things done differently, it breeds innovation in other people completely unrelated as well. And those are the exciting ones as well that we get to see in, say, 2023 or even 2024, based on how these things are created in the first place. And that's also why I like highlighting them as well. So if nothing else, a few more things to tempt your wallet, as if there weren't enough already. Hit the thumb button, subscribe, hopefully. If you like this sort of thing, let me know. Let me know what else should have been on this list. Let me know what else you backed or you had your eye on that would have been perfect for this as well. Because, you know, again, I covered a couple hundred projects over the last year, and I tried to sort them down as best I could. And these were the ones that stood out, but obviously I can't catch them all. So let me know what I missed. Stay classy. Have a great day. See you around.